What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Wait, What Are We Talking About podcast, episode 177. My name is Bret, aka Enigma 9011, and today we're flying solo, but we're going to be talking some fun topics. If you guys want to catch the podcast live, you can always go over to twitch.tv/Enigma9011. Drop a follow over there, or you get notified when we go live with the podcast or other streams. You can join in the chat, join on the chaos, join on the fun over there. But if you can't catch it live, that's A-OK. You can go over to YouTube and podcast services the very next week, where it's broken out topic by topic and put as one big video and MP3 for your amusement on the following Friday. Last but not least, any way you can support the show: likes, reviews, shares, comments, whatever it may be. It may seem small, but it does help the channel out immensely. So if you have the time to do that, and you can take the time to do that, we would appreciate you greatly. Today we're going to be talking about two different topics. I mean, usually the topics are always different, but we're going to talk about Street Fighter 6, and we're going to be talking about Across the Spider-Verse. So let's talk about Street Fighter 6 first. Let's get on into it. So as of recording today, Street Fighter 6 dropped its full release on Friday. So I've had a few days to kind of tinker around with it, play with it, and kind of wanted to share my thoughts and feelings on it so far. There were a few betas going into the game leading up to release. I did not have the opportunity to play either of those, but in previous podcast episodes, we were lucky enough to have Dio and Danny on, and they shared their experiences with the beta and different characters that they were playing as, and I really enjoyed those conversations with them. But I did have the opportunity to play the demo that came out, I don't know, maybe a few weeks before release. Just a short demo, nothing too extravagant. You had your basic tutorial, and then you had Ryu, excuse me, and Luke available to you to use in some matches and stuff like that. I'm not sure if it was a time demo. I do remember at some point it was just like, thank you for playing. It kind of like kicked me out. I'm sure I could have gone back into it, but I might have had to start from scratch. I don't know. I had gotten my fix, so I didn't really investigate too much farther. So yeah, just a short demo. So obviously you could dip your toe into it, see if you liked it, like the mechanics leading into release, as a demo should do. You got something to say, Moose? Who you like better, Ryu or Luke? Luke's got some big ass forearms in this game, don't he? And then Ryu's got his sexy beard back, so that's good. So yeah, demo was good. You know, nothing surprising there. Obviously, they got a whole new art style and the graphics using the RE engine. I'm not sure if they used the RE engine for 5, but looked definitely phenomenal in this. So cool to dive into the demo. And diving into the full release, it's just more of that, just obviously expanded because of the roster and the game modes that you do have available to you. So let's talk about the roster. So launch roster, we have 18 characters. Yeah, 18 characters. So we have making their I'll just list them all off. We have Cammy, Lily, Zangief, JP, Marissa, Manon, DJ, E Honda, Dalzim, Blanca, Ken, Yuri, Kimberly, Guile, Chun-Li, Jamie, Luke, and Ryu. So good mixture of classic characters as well as a bunch of new ones. So for the new characters, we got Lily, JP, Marissa, Manon, Kimberly, and Jamie making their debuts as characters here. As the rest of them, I believe, are all Street Fighter 2 and prior. A lot of the what was it? Not Road Warriors, that sounds stupid. World Warriors, I think that's what it's called, the Street Fighter 2 roster. So good group of characters so far. Doesn't obviously feel like a super small roster, not a super big roster, but I do know they have some DLC planned, shockingly, already. I don't know if they've announced anybody yet for that first season pass. I think we've seen Rashid from Street Fighter 5 making a return, but I could just be making stuff up. So let's look up that real quick. Okay, they did announce. Capcom has confirmed Street Fighter 6 characters. Here's characters including their release dates. So, Street Fighter 6 will introduce at least 4 additional characters by spring 2024, with plans to continuously expand the roster afterwards. So, the first group of Year 1 DLC characters, as they are saying here, is Rashid, Akuma, Ed, and it's either AKI or Aki. Apparently he's a new fighter, so there's that. So yeah, they're all coming out throughout the year. AKI coming out in autumn, Rashid apparently in summer, both of 2023. Ed is going to be winter of 24, and Goki is going to be spring of 24, or Akuma. I guess they're going by two names there. But yeah, so cool. Not surprised by that. Obviously, fighting games, always adding more roster members to there to kind of expand on the experience. But my experience so far with the characters, all pretty fun. From the ones I have played, most of my time has been with either DJ, Yuri, or Kimberly so far, because those seem to be the characters that I want to kind of dive into. You got your, your typical Shoto characters with the fireballs and stuff like that, and then you have your charge characters, which, granted, I'm not very strong with those charge characters, and some of these characters I've been diving into I definitely want to learn more about are those charge characters, so we'll have to see how that goes. But all the characters with their redesigns look great, and have a good look to them. The new characters fit in pretty well. I haven't seen all of them yet. Like, I haven't seen Lily in action, and I haven't seen Marissa in action in terms of my gameplay. I think I've seen a little bit of Marissa outside for other streams and content. But yeah, everybody seems to fit very well. Nobody feels like super outsider, which is nice. So yeah, character roster so far, good to go. As for game modes, we got 3 different game modes. We got Fighting Ground, which is pretty much your you versus CPU, classic arcades, player versus player in terms of like local play. Extreme Battle, which is battles that are held under kind of gimmicky rules. So maybe you'll have a bull that's running through the arena from time to time that you need to avoid, or you have different obstacles that you're trying to avoid while also doing the regular fight or other rules that you have set. So that's your Fighting Ground. Battle Hub is pretty much your all online stuff, so your ranked battle, your casual match, the online hub that they have, where I believe eventually we'll be able to play older Street Fighter titles, Street Fighter 2, Third Strike, Street Fighter 4. I'm not sure 100% on specifics, but they've kind of teased and shown the little arcade cabinets there. And it seems like once you either play them in the online mode or maybe do like a fighter pass, like a season pass, not a season pass, a battle pass or something, you will unlock that for casual offline play, if I'm reading that correctly. So that's kind of cool that they're just adding that extra layer, obviously, of the history into it. And then lastly, we have the World Tour. So the World Tour is pretty much going to be your single player content. The nice thing too, if we're going to just circle back for a second in terms of like downloading the stuff, you don't have to download certain aspects of it. It seems like the Fighting Ground and the World Tour were like separate downloads, which when you put in the disc or you buy the game, like you have access to it all. I just remember it prompting me like, would you like to install all of these modes? So if for some reason you didn't want the single player and you just wanted like, hey, let's see what the fighting mode is about, or you're really into online play and that's your focus, you don't have to install or download the World Tour mode. You can just focus on the modes that you want. So that's kind of nice to free up a little space. But sorry, going back to it, the World Tour mode is your single player mode. So you are creating a character and you are essentially going around Metro City and training and learning from the Legend Masters, or whatever they're called. It might just be Legends. So you're going to them, and it's kind of like RPG. You just go, you do missions and little different encounters. I've only dipped my toe into it, but so far it's pretty fun. The character creator, very in depth. I've always been very crappy at character creators. If I'm not gonna lie, I can get if I'm going for myself, I get the general gist of it, but it's like, this is your hair and eye color and facial hair on someone else's body kind of thing. Like, it doesn't look super. I know some people are really into character creators. Some people like me just like, it's fine. But this one really goes in depth, allows for a lot of freedom. You could go realistic if you want to try and make either your likeness or someone else's likeness, or you can go entirely goofy with it. They do have a lot of out there accessories in terms of like facial hair or eyebrow shape or I believe one of the presets is like a mechanized person, so you could do that. I will say something that I appreciate quite a bit is you can save your custom characters as like recipes. So any not modifiers, but any numbers that you change on the sliders to change like different size or aspect ratios of whatever, at the end of your character creator you save it as a recipe, so that is always there. So either you could reload it and tweak it, or if you wanted to, you're not stuck to one design. You can go in, make something that's super hyper fantasy or crazy looking, and then still have another alternative character if you wanted that's more quote unquote normal or fits into the world, I guess you could say. And like Jeff's saying in chat, I've definitely seen some people make some crazy stuff, especially with the demo time, because you use this character both in World Tour and as your online avatar in the online mode when you're running around that like hub world. Some people have gone super crazy with it. Like dimensions are all crazy. Like they got giant buff chests, but then they got skinny little tiny arms. Or like their skin tone is like something super red or super blue, or like, you know, they just look like someone played with Play-Doh and just put something together. So I'd be interested in now, once, like, since the full release is out, how crazy in depth people have gone with character creators, because once again, people who really like character creators, whatever game it may be, Soul Calibur, WWE 2K, some people really put and dedicate a lot of time into it and can make some really crazy or at least unique stuff. So I'm excited to jump into there eventually, see what that is like and how crazy people got with their creations. And I guess you can also upload them too. So if people are making a la WWE, like making custom characters that maybe aren't going to be into Street Fighter, like past characters or characters from other fighting games, you can apparently upload that, and like you could download that for characters. It's not going to give anybody like a custom move set or anything like that, so they're not going to act and move like those characters, but at least their likeness will be there, and then you could kind of, you know, suspend belief there and kind of play around with the fantasy roster that you might want. Just a cool feature. I appreciate that they had that flexibility and freedom of like making multiple of them. I don't know how many you can make. Didn't seem like too many, maybe like 10 to 12, but still, at least the option there is a nice thing. So diving into World Tour, it is super cheesy in a way, because they make fun of themselves and they understand what they're doing here. So once again, the concept is RPG. So you're a character, you're going to these different legends and you're learning how to fight, right? Get stronger. Well, how do you do that? So you're going around Metro City, and at least from what I'm doing, you essentially just pick fights with people, whether it's bad guys on the streets, which, hey, you're doing the right thing and trying to clean up the city, or you can just randomly run up to Joe Schmo, like Jeremy in a suit, and just be like, yo, bro, let's fight. And you just pick a fight with them in the street and whoop some ass and get some XP. And they acknowledge this right at the beginning with the intro. They're like, Metro City, we have flying cars and we have this technology, but still, when it comes down to it, fighting is only solved one way, and you fight on the streets. I mean, I get it. It's called Street Fighter. It's just like, wow, this is, yeah, we're really going into the cheese here, which I appreciate. They acknowledge it and, like, you know, try and steer into the skid. It's just, it's still funny running up to just random people and just be like, yeah, let's fight. So from the glimpse that I've gotten into the story mode, very simple mechanics. They start you off with the modern control scheme. So the modern control scheme is something that they've added to try and help acclimate newer players into fighting games, make it a little bit more interesting to them, and not this in-depth puzzle of figuring out quarter circle motions or Shoryuken motions, half circle motions, the charge character, stuff like that, with the classic controls, which is still in there. But in this first chapter, you're stuck to the modern. So you have your 4 face buttons. So if we're playing on PlayStation, your cross, square, triangle, and circle. Obviously Xbox, X, X, Y, B, A, etc. You know, you get your 4 buttons there. 3 of them are going to be your light, medium, heavy attacks, while the top button is going to be your special attacks. So you can use that much more simpler. If you hold one of the triggers, the right trigger, and you hit one of your attack buttons, I think it's your light attack button, you'll do an auto combo, and usually that will end in a special move or whatever it is. So it just allows for you to play it a little bit easier. Like I said, not have such a strenuous time trying to figure everything out and button mashing per se. So in the first chapter, this is what they use. After that first chapter, you have the freedom of choosing if you want to stick with the modern, or if you want to go to the more classic controls of, fighting game past. Totally up to you. So you do that, and you get introduced to the world, just some mechanics, just like any kind of open world RPG-esque, like this is your store, and this is where you get food, and this is where you get resources. And your first teacher is Luke in this, and you are kind of paired up with another student, Bosch, I think is how you say his name. And you're going around doing these tasks for him and kind of learning what the basis of it is. Yeah, it seems interesting. It seems fun. I'm curious to see where it goes from here. One thing I kind of had a little bit of a hang up with initially, so I only dove into World Tour today for a little bit. But when I first started playing, I did a few arcade ladders, and arcade mode across not just Street Fighter, numerous games. Usually it's a shorter story. It's just focused on one character, and you get like an intro cutscene, which is dialogue most of the time and still images, and then you get the end, and you kind of get a glimpse into what this character is dealing with in the universe. And when I saw World Tour mode, World Tour mode, granted, only dipped a toe in it, so I don't know. I was a little like, oh, I wish they kind of went more in depth with the story. I don't know if with this creative character we will get an in-depth story. There must be. It must be a big, decent mode because they put a lot of time into it, and obviously they built it out, that maybe it will go into the story. But, for example, Ken Masters, something's gone on with him where he was framed of something. He owned this part of this $1 million company, and something's happened to him where initially when we see him, and we see him in this game, like he's kind of run down. I think he's working at a construction site. Like he's been framed for something. Accusations of orchestrating a criminal plot have forced Ken to abandon his family and business and go into hiding. So like I want to explore that. And it seems like JP, this new character, seems to be like the big bad, similar to an M. Bison, that they're kind of building up as this like secretive person, whatever it is. And I'm just not sure, once again, because I've only really seen the top layer of it, if this World Tour mode, this create a character story, is going to dive into this. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more of an in-depth story. Like, I know Street Fighter V story wasn't super and didn't get a lot of good praise, but at least they went into something where they explained a through point of M. Bison's back and his, underlings are, causing stuff, and then the good guys try and tackle that, and we get some kind of master plot revealed, yada, yada, yada. Once again, not the best story, I understand, to compare it to, but I was hoping for some more cinematic story like that. World Tour could definitely be this mode. I just don't know yet. If it is, great. I'll shut up and, hey, I was in the wrong here. But seeing that only really touched upon in arcade mode and being a very quick glimpse, as should be expected just because of how arcade modes always are, it was just a story that I was hoping was explored a little bit more in some way, whether they had a separate story mode that was just our main characters, our main roster, and seeing the adventure they go on, compared to this created person's RPG-esque story. once again, if it goes that way, great. I'll shut up and acknowledge I was wrong. But right now, I don't know if that's the route they're going, or if this will just be not a choose your own adventure, but like your hero's journey and seeing their progression here. We'll have to see. In terms of gameplay, everything runs really smooth. I like the color palette and dynamic that they've decided to go with this game and art style. Very cool. And, you know, just another way to kind of slightly change up what they've been doing. Other small things, extreme battles we talked about. I dipped my toe into that as well. It's pretty fun. They do have, similar to Smash Bros, they have team battles now. So if you wanted to pick a roster of characters from 3 to 5 or something like that and go against either a CPU or a player, you can pick those roster of characters, do single elimination style, whatever rules you may want to, and kind of do it back-to-back matches that way, survival style, whatever it is. There's a lot of elements that you can play with where things will carry over from round to round, or there'll be fresh starts each time. If you want a random order for your characters, or if you want a set order, whatever it may be. Just another layer of gameplay and game modes that I appreciate there. And then let's talk about the commentary real quick. So something they added in Street Fighter 6, if you don't know, is essentially like Evo or like competitive commentary that you can put on over your matches if you'd like. You pick a color commentator and you pick a play-by-play commentator. Between 4, there's 2 representatives in each section, English representatives and Japanese representatives, and you can pick any combination of those for yourself, and you kind of hear them spectating, or rather commentating, over your matches. And it's not, it's not the best. You'll hear a bit of the same lines over and over again. But I don't know. I like it a lot. I kind of dig it. It gives you that like competitive feel. It just adds an extra layer to it of like something new, and that energy level behind it. It's not perfect. It's a nice touch to it. I really enjoy it, but I can definitely see how it will get either old fast, or it could be like too much going on at the same time. They do lower the rest of the game's audio, like the fight sounds and things that are going on when you're doing character versus character. They do lower all of that, so the commentary is the prominent thing you are hearing. So it's not just this super wall of sound just hitting you all at once, but I can see how that could potentially be another factor of just like there's too much going on, and like I said, getting old with the lines either repeating often or not correlating a lot to what's going on. It's just like general talk, which I get. That's kind of what they have to do. You're not going to have somebody in the audio booth for 20, maybe 30, 40, 50 hours just saying every potential thing that could come up, character specific or whatever. That'd be insane. But I do appreciate the effort put into it. It's just something new that adds a little fun variety into it. And I'm curious if they will expand on it with time, with either DLC characters, if they do decide to go more in depth with moves. I'm trying to remember from my gameplay with it on if they mentioned like any special moves happening. I don't think they did. I do remember them calling out like raw supers happening or counters or whiffs and stuff like that, but I don't think they ever called out any specific like Ryu's doing this, Luke's doing this, la la la, whatever it is. So I doubt they'll go back to it in that aspect, but I wonder if they'll add any more commentators potentially down the line. Being only 4 and 4, I don't know. I guess these are the tippity tops of the commentating world. I mean, I only recognize 2, and one is a WWE wrestler, so I don't think she's on the top of the scales in terms of the commentary world, but I get it. Like, she's really into Street Fighter, stuff like that. So great to see her in there, but I wonder if they'll add any more commentators into it, or if they'll just stick with the 4v4 or 4 and 4, and this was kind of like their testing ground, to kind of, dip a toe in the water, see if it works, see if people like it, and then maybe this will be a continued feature down the line. Obviously, that's years and years down the line. But still, I like it. I know it's not going to be everybody's favorite. Probably won't use it every time, but just something every once in a while, turn it on. Could be something fun. Add a little bit extra layer into the gameplay. Dio in chat says you could boost the sound as well. Capcom implemented visual audio sounds for players with potential disabilities. Super awesome to think of these fans as well. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes, accessibility is definitely a great option. We were talking about the controller scheme earlier, whether it's just new players or any level of player. Adding those different ways to play is always going to be a plus. I know a lot of people which bitch about this for a certain game series. I won't get too in depth with that because that's a whole different podcast, but allowing more players or inviting more players to play is always going to be a great thing. And yeah, just giving people options are always great. If you decide to use them, great. If you tinker with them, great. Whatever it is, having the option there for the player is just fantastic. Why not allow for people to play? And it's not going to affect my gameplay in any way. I don't know how a modern versus classic in terms of damage or anything like that, what's the difference is, but like, how am I going to know when playing somebody online? I don't know if it displays that. I haven't dipped my toes online, but whatever. But like, that's not going to affect my user experience, so why should I care in the negative way that these options are there? I think that's a great move. I know a lot of studios have been doing this lately, and I appreciate it. Keep doing that. Allow more players to play your game. It's going to increase the livelihood of your game, the player base, and just makes it more fun for everybody. If there's more people playing, people are going to have fun. I hate going on to a game and being like, oh, I want to play this game, and nobody's online. That's the worst. Especially with multiplayer games like this. But yeah, Street Fighter 6 has been great so far. Like I said, it's only been a few days, and I've only dipped my toes into World Tour, so I'm excited to dive into that more, see how kind of goofy and hokey it gets, and see if it explores this bigger story like we kind of talked about with Ken's story with JP, why he's such a bad guy, building him up. We'll have to see. So looking forward to diving into it more. Looking forward to playing with people online. I know Dio and Danny I've talked with. Obviously, they're at a different level than I am in terms of the fighting game stuff. But looking to diving into that. Hopefully this gets a little bit more longevity out of me compared to a Street Fighter 4 and a Street Fighter 5. Both were good in their own regards, but just didn't have that hook in me like other games have had in the past. So I think the variety of game modes here will definitely help that with an in-depth story mode, or rather single-player mode, and obviously having solid online stuff. I think that will definitely help, but obviously time will tell there. Real quick, Dio in chat does say, yes, there are damage changes for Modern and Classic. So it allows players to get their foot in the door, play something they want to, enjoy something they maybe haven't in the past, but then also allow for room for growth of like, hey, I really am picking up on this. I get, where we are in the modern controls. Let's try Classic. Let's try out these things. And they do have a pretty in-depth training mode, not just go into the training room and beat up on a dummy. They do have that as always, but there are specific character guides where they can show you different aspects and combos for them, where you can watch it being demonstrated and then try out different elements. And they have their combo challenges, which I know might not be the most exciting of game modes for players. I know I certainly am like, ugh, after a while. But the tools are there if people choose to learn. If not, if you want to stick with modern, that's totally fine. You play the way you want to play, enjoy it how you want to enjoy it, and hopefully you get something out of it. That's the important thing. So, yeah, Street Fighter 6 has been great so far. Looking forward to seeing more down the line as we talk to the 4 DLC characters, see who they announce down the road. And, I mean, Street Fighter 5 was around for quite a few years, so hopefully this has another long life ahead of it as well. And we could see how this franchise continues to grow moving forward. So let's move into topic 2, shall we? We're going to be talking across the Spider-Verse. Now, I explained this pre-recording, but As with all movie reviews, we are going to give a general review first. So just my thoughts on the movie, how I felt about it, all that jazz. If you haven't seen the movie yet, because it literally dropped on Thursday night, totally fair. You don't want to be spoiled. This is your time, or after that, this is your time to exit. We'll see you later. But please come back to this at your leisure, and then you can hear all the fun stuff and spoilers there. When we do and get in the spoiler section, we're not going to go through in-depth plot-wise what happened in the film, just some cool things that we might have seen or that I thought were cool, whatever it is, all that fun stuff there. So, I'll give you a clear warning when we are going into spoiler section, and we're going in-depth, nothing held back there. So, there you go. So, Across the Spider-Verse dropped. As of recording this past weekend, we got our sequel to Into the Spider-Verse from Sony Pictures Animation. And, man, this movie was freaking amazing. It was amazing. A lot of fun was had throughout. Into the Spider-Verse had its praise when it came out, just the different animation styles and the fun story that we were telling with Miles and introducing him to a more mainstream audience. And obviously these other characters like Spider-Man Noir and Spider-Gwen and Spider-Ham, and I don't remember the mech spider girl. But taking these characters that, typically we don't know and bring them to the limelight and giving Miles a great story was a lot of fun. But this one just takes it and boosts it by 100. Granted, there's a lot of Easter eggs and hidden things where if you didn't know about certain aspects, that adds just layers onto the cake. But in terms of a story that they tell in this movie, this is really good. It's a coming of age story for Miles, obviously being a few years older from the previous movie, seeing him deal with his own issues of growing up and trying to be independent, but his parents still want him to be the child, obviously, that they raised growing up, and him trying to break out, do his own thing, do what he feels is right. They just did a fantastic job with it, and how the story builds in tenseness and I guess you could say stress. When we end up finishing this movie, I would hearken it akin to a Star Wars, and stick with me here. It feels like an episode 5. Not that it's that grim of a fate where we leave episode 5 of Star Wars, but that build and that momentum from episode 5 where we leave things going into Star Wars episode 6, this feels like that. Now, granted, we knew this was going to be a 2-parter going into it, at least the people who are, really paying attention to this stuff, we knew this was going to be a 2-parter going into it, but I feel like this does a great job of establishing a story, building a story, and not leaving us at a disappointing part, but leaving us wanting more, and in the best way possible. Not oh, that's where they ended it, and now I'm just sitting here pissed. It's just feeding that excitement for everyone, and I just loved it. I had a great time with it. Like I said, the Easter egg stuff is going to add extra layers for people who know that stuff, but I don't think that detracts from the story they're telling here, where if you don't know necessarily or get a lot of the references or even some of the references here, where you're going to be at a disadvantage and not entertained by this thing, I think it's just similar to the MCU and any of these things where they have a bigger universe in play here. I think it's just an extra layer of fan service for these people who have kind of invested, I guess you could say, outside of this, and kind of rewards them for their knowledge. But it's not going to leave others in the dust where they're so confused because of certain things being involved or referenced, that the experience is limited or lower from them. I think is what I'm trying to say. So, I think it's a great and amazing movie. I'm really debating going to see it again, to be honest. Yeah, great movie. If you had even the slightest interest of going, definitely go and enjoy yourself. We are now going to go into spoiler sections for Across the Spider-Verse. So if you have not seen the movie yet and you want to head out and not get spoiled on things, now's your time. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate you. Come back later and hear what I thought about it afterwards. If you don't care or you already saw it, stick around because we're going to go into spoilers. And 3, 2, 1. Holy crap. There was a lot of Easter eggs in this movie. As we knew, I mean, you saw it in the trailers how many Spider-Men and Spider-People are in this film, and they definitely went crazy with that. I'm sure like 80% to 90% of the Spider-People we saw in the film were probably made up just for this movie, just because you had to fill the space with them. But seeing versions of them, like the Insomniac Spider-Man being in there for a second, seeing the comic book flat panel Spider-Man, seeing Ben Reilly's Scarlet Spider-Man, or Scarlet Spider? Whichever one the clone one is, with the dope-ass hoodie. He's in there. We see the return of Spider-Man Noir and Spider-Ham and the robot one. I don't remember her name. I apologize. Seeing them, we see... who else did we see? There was a Spider-Woman in there, which I don't remember her actual name. I think it's just Spider-Woman, but I remember having her action figure. She's got like a black and white suit in there. Seeing her in there is fantastic, and I'm sure there's plenty of others that I missed and I'm forgetting. Really cool to see and just be like poking out or pointing at different ones, but like, oh my god, that one's in there, that one's in there. And then you get the gimmicky and goofy ones, which we've seen in that second trailer of like the Spider Dinosaur and the Spider Cat one, which I'll admit I laughed way too hard at. Just a lot of fun seeing those guys in there, and obviously seeing the more established ones that they did introduce in this one, like the Spider-Woman who's pregnant in her universe, and then you get Spider-Man 2099 being somewhat of a villain in this one, along with the Indian Spider-Man Pravitar. Yikes, I don't know how to pronounce his name, and I do apologize, but he looked amazing. And for someone who hasn't delved super deep into the Spider-Verse and all of the different Spider-Men that are here, coming off of Secret Wars 2, back when, what was that, 2018? Yikes. And the different like comic lines that they did put out during that time of like 5-issue runs, like you had the Secret Wars line that was like 12 or something like that, but then you got these like mini stories of the different multiverses that they were telling. So there was the 2099 universe where you got to see all the different superheroes in that age or that time period, and then you got the Spider-Verse ones where you had these different Spider people crossing over with each other, similar to how these movies play out. So seeing that and knowing a little bit about them, or getting the glimpse there and seeing them here, was just fun. It was very exciting to see them here and presented in this medium format. Let's go with that one. That's probably a more accurate word. So cool to see them. We got our first glimpse at a live action Prowler. As we got, Childish Gambino, what's his name? Donald Glover. We got to see him in there as Prowler, captured. Granted, it was short, but I will tell you, the theater I was in, everybody popped for that. That was cool to see. We got a reference to the MCU and Disney's canon with Doctor Strange and that hocus pocus that's going on there. Not in terms of character, but just a shout out from 2099, which I believe is in one of the trailers. So you get that, like, just that tie-in of like all the things that are going on. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what other cool things there were. Oh, okay. If we're going to talk about Insomniac Spider-Man, we got to see Genki real quick, and we see him playing
Spider-Man Remastered on his PlayStation 5 while Miles comes in and out of the dorm like twice. So yeah, a lot of different references, just a lot of fun, a lot of good stuff there. Like I said, I'm sure I'm missing a bunch or just not remembering some, but it was a good time throughout there, and very entertaining. In terms of story, so we had seen in the trailers that they were showing us the Spot, and how the Spot was kind of like robbing this bodega and was kind of goofy what was going on with his power set. And I'm sure most of us, we thought, okay, the Spot is just going to be kind of this gimmick villain that is going to be like your day-to-day thing that Miles is going to deal with at the beginning of the movie with the whole school discussion and him not being at the meeting right away. It's just him day-to-day saving the town. The fact that they took the Spot, which, granted, I don't know anything from in comic lore or comic history, I just know them from this movie, took him, first of all, integrated him into the first story, which I saw this with my buddy Billy, and like the backstory they gave him, you threw a bagel at me while you were at Oscorp, and then he was there present when the reactor blew up, which made him into the Spot. Like, it wasn't, stories have done this before where they take characters in the sequel or other stuff, a la, if we were going to talk a recent example, Fast X right now, right? Jason Momoa's character was apparently in Fast 5, and like that's his character motivation here. A lot of movies do it where they'll call back to previous films and be like, oh, this is where I turned bad, or where things went sour for me and why I built this reputation. Good, smart storytelling, like good storytelling. But sometimes it's like retconned in where they kind of have to shoehorn in or do new footage in the situation. But they must, I don't know if they planned for this, I assume they did, but if you go back to Into the Spider-Verse, you can see the moment when Miles throws a bagel and hits a guy in the head, and it just made me laugh of like, wow, that actually was in there. It wasn't just something stupid that they just happened to say like, oh yeah, I happened to be present there. You know, granted, they could have just found it funny or found something to kind of resonate with and then build off of there. But making him into the prominent villain in here, totally did not expect that. So Spot, when we first see him, doesn't really understand his powers and doesn't really seem to have a lot of control in there. But gradually he learns that he can get more powerful over time by jumping from universe to universe and kind of causing this reaction that triggered his powers initially, and adding on to it and kind of making himself more powerful with each time, and seeing him be the prominent trigger or effect for what's going to happen eventually to Miles' dad, was an interesting take. I'm sure a lot of us just thought Spider-Man 2099 was going to be the main villain here, chasing down Miles, being this anomaly, and trying to do what he thinks is right in terms of protecting the multiverses and the different universes where the Spider-Men are and all the citizens there. But that's, while still a prominent part, just isn't the big bad in terms of what's going to happen in the grand scheme of things. Now, granted, we don't get to that point. We get to the tip of the iceberg where the Spot has arrived back in Miles' universe. His dad's still okay now, but we have this, canon events that every Spider-Man goes through. So they showed it a little bit, and in showing it, we also got callbacks to other live-action Spider-Man. Once again, we didn't see Tom Holland's, but we did see Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man dealing with some of these canon events. So we see, like, each of them has a Uncle Ben moment. Each of them has this canon event, which they're focusing on right now, with a close police captain dies or something happens to them which will affect the hero. So whether it's a lot of them, it's Officer Stacy or Captain Stacy rather, his passing, and then Miles will be his dad because his dad is becoming captain. They'll all have that. They didn't really make a big point of it, but they showed like all of them will have a moment with Venom where they have to go through that moment of the suit and stuff like that. I'm curious. I doubt it. I'm curious if we'll get that moment with Miles. If they do, probably not in these sequence of movies, the 3. But I was just like, oh, nice that they pointed that out. And there might have been one other one, but I'm not sure. But essentially, if these canon moments don't happen, then it puts the whole universe in danger. The way they explain this is Spider-Man 2099. In his universe, the officer died, and I think his family died. I don't know if they're connected. Somehow, family's gone. He feels awful about it. And in turn, he finds another universe where he died instead, and he like takes the place of his former self in that universe because he wants to be with his family. And unfortunately, because things changed in that universe, that whole universe got like wiped out or fizzled out because it wasn't correct. I don't know if this is a TVA reference or what to the MCU, but that universe ceases to exist. So he kind of goes through that loss again. So the whole point of this is like to stop Miles from messing with this canon event. Unfortunately, he did mess with Spider-Man India's in saving the officer there and the child, and they're going to try and save that universe, but there's no guarantee. So that's the whole purpose here with 2099. He's trying to stop that. And obviously we get a glimpse at the end of the film of like, oh, there's hope for these universes to continue on because of the change. We see in Gwen's universe herself, like her dad retires or quits because of their altercation of her revealing her identity as Spider-Gwen, and he decides to quit and not be on the force anymore, and that universe seems to be persisting. And as we see at the very, very end of Miles going back to the universe where the spider came from and bit him initially, making him the anomaly, we see that universe is still going. We see that Uncle Eric, whoever the Prowler is, he's still there. And in turn, that Miles, which probably the biggest reveal and like shocker of like, oh, whoa, we're doing this, is the Prowler in that universe. So we're building up this enemy in the third one where it's going to be Miles versus Miles, Spider-Man versus Prowler, and dealing with this other universe while trying to get back to his correct one to save his dad. But that universe seems to be persisting without a Spider-Man even being present because of the spider not being there and then somehow getting transported to Miles' universe to create that anomaly as well. So yeah, it's going to be... We see that maybe 2099's thesis or what he thinks is fact is not 100% correct. My thinking of why maybe that universe specifically blew up, went wrong, is because he himself of a different universe inserted himself into that one. Maybe that's what caused the hocus pocus and breaking. Similar to Miles interfering with Spider-Man India's canon event, like because of his interference of a different multiverse affecting this one, then that causes that one to break. Obviously we don't have a clear answer, but that seems to be the case, just because we see these other universes so far. Fine, I guess if we want to combat that, then you're going to be like, well, why didn't the spider that bit Miles break everything? Fair, but there was a corrective event in that Spider-Man dying. I don't know if that was the way of being like, ooh, correct course type thing. Not sure. I guess time will tell there. But it's been going fine for years, so who knows. Yeah, it was just a lot of fun. Loved this movie. Different art styles were great. I love with Spider-Gwen stuff because we get her kind of more backstory or a little bit more in depth with her in the intro. I love how that alludes right to her comics, of the like very melted pastel looking colors, and color scheme. Just really appreciate that as once again someone who delved into those comics at least at the beginning. Those early comic covers will definitely show you like that's where they got their inspiration from. Just really appreciated that. Seeing her in the band, seeing the Mary Janes there. What else? They had some other stuff. I would say the only world that was a little concerning, and granted, this could have just been a small thing and like not everybody's going to notice, when Miles as Prowler gets revealed at the end and the two of them are face to face, a little bit of frame drops there. And usually that's not a thing I notice because I'm done with frame rate, but that one seemed to chug a little bit, and just surprised that happened. I don't know if it's supposed to be the animation style of that world because it is a little bit more 3D-esque compared to some of the other ones. Not that they aren't 3D, but this one goes a little harder, I would say, on that. But when they came face to face, yeah, it dropped a little bit. So I'm not sure what happened there. But visually, everything else looks stunning. Everything looks unique. Everything is bright and vibrant, or has a distinct look to it, which is appreciated. And as we see in the end, we're going to kind of get a meshing of two worlds with the old Into the Spider-Verse team and the new Across the Spider-Verse team, seeing them come together. So excited to see characters of old in the first one come back, like a Spider-Man Noir. Will Nick Cage come back? I don't know. And the robotic, like mech Spider-Man. And then we get the new team with Spider-Man India, Spider-Punk, or Punk Spider-Man, which was fantastic, just being all against like anti-establishment and everything. He turned out to be way more entertaining of a character than I thought. A little hard to understand in the beginning of the film in terms of dialogue, but he definitely grew on me, became a favorite in there, and his art style is cool, being this like, I don't know how to describe it, but like very comic booky and like almost like cut out paper. Like there's always borders around stuff, like his guitar specifically. I just thought that was neat. And then seeing the return of Peter Parker, what was it, Peter B. Parker, was that his full name? And seeing Mayday, maybe just May, but the little baby was adorable. Seeing her zip around, and her little knit mask that she would pull down, was just great. So, yeah, fantastic movie. Definitely looking forward to obviously the next one, but looking forward to maybe even going to see this one again and seeing what else maybe I can point out, because obviously there's a lot of Spider-Men in this movie. I think Spectacular Spider-Man was supposed to be in this. I'm not sure if he was, along with there was a Fox Kids Spider-Man that had like a very dark suit, bright red lines, and like a web cape. I don't recall seeing him, but I thought he was supposed to be in this one. I know they joked around about Japanese Spider-Man. Don't recall seeing him either. I thought that would have been more of like a gimmicked moment like they did with the comic panel Spider-Man being flat. Kind of make it more of a thing. I don't think we saw Dancing Spider-Man, like the Tobey Maguire. Like, I don't remember if that was the first one or the second one that tease was there. I don't know. I'm not sure. But overall, Across the Spider-Verse, fantastic, amazing movie, a lot of fun. Being its own separate story, the Into the Spider-Verse storyline they're telling here, definitely open to a more general audience, I would say. Like I said, the references and the Easter eggs just going to add layers on top of for the people who have been invested in the Spider-Man lore for a while. But it's a strong story that they're telling here. Definitely compelling story that they're telling here. Simple if you break it down to its basic core elements, but it works really well, and just happy to see that it's delivering. Like I had a great opening weekend. I think the best of this year so far. So, props to these guys. Obviously, animation is no joke, but to do it in a bunch of different styles and have this amount of characters on the screen all at once. Just props to the team there, and looking forward to see what they bring to the table next. Yeah. Well, guys, this has been another episode of The Wait Where We Talking About podcast. My name is Bret, aka Enigma9011, and you can catch this podcast live over on twitch.tv/Enigma9011. Drop a follow over there. You'll get notified when we go live with the podcast or stream, so you can join the chaos and the fun like Dio and Jeff did today and have some fun on the conversation or with the conversation with us. But if you can't catch it live, that's A-OK. Go over to YouTube and podcast services the very next week, where it's broken out topic by topic and put as one big video and MP3 for amusement on the following Friday. Last but not least, any way you can support the show: likes, comments, shares, reviews, whatever it may be. It may seem small, but it does help the channel grow immensely. So if you have the time to do that and you could do that, we would appreciate you greatly. Hope you guys had a good time with this podcast today. We're talking some video games, talking some movies. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we will see you guys on the next one. Take care.